On this quiet residential street in the Sinaloa state capital of Culiacan, with a school just across the street, is one of 5 Chapo Guzman safe houses. We're going inside to take a look. Before even entering, cameras and reinforced steel doors reveal the priority of security. I think one of the first things that really hits you when you come in is just how modest and basic it is, you know, a small little kitchen. Some of the bedrooms here are pretty dingy. The Marines tell us this was part of his strategy to have a very modest accommodation so that he could hide in plain sight. In almost every bedroom of the house, there are 2 TV screens, one for security and one for TV. But when you go into the bathroom, the picture of a normal house really does transform. Beneath this bathtub, a secret tunnel. So if you climb down the steps, you find yourself in the tunnel itself, and you can see it's been quite carefully constructed out of wood. You have to crouch a little bit, but you're quite mobile, and there's an electricity system running throughout it. The nearest other safe house from here is 3 kilometers in this direction. The constructed part of the tunnel ends here, and if you go through this door, you find yourself in the sewage system of Culiacan, an ideal escape route. And the tunnel system comes out right here in another safe house just down the road, and as you can see, it is a very similar setup to the previous one. In all the houses, evidence of life suddenly suspended. The minutiae is often interesting: a child's slide, Christmas decorations, and a fondness for mayonnaise. This safe house is perhaps the most significant of all of them. This is where Chapo Guzman escaped from when he was being pursued by Mexican Marines. They broke down this door and found they had missed him by 8 minutes. And this is where he fled to, through this bedroom and into this bathroom, where, as you can see, there is another escape hatch underneath this bathtub. Mexican Marines tell us they discovered this entire network of underground tunnels and safe houses when they arrested the head of Chapo Guzman's security, and he gave them this information. It once again underlines the very central role of intelligence in the arrest of one of the world's most wanted men.
They thought his empire was gone forever. But deep beneath the shadows of El Chapo's fortress, a hidden vault has finally been forced open. What lay sealed for years isn't just money or weapons. It's something far more disturbing, something that rewrites everything we believed about the world's most feared cartel boss. In today's video, for the first time, you'll see the shocking truth uncovered inside El Chapo's secret vault, and why authorities wish it had stayed buried.
Today, Mexican authorities released a new video of the capture of the drug kingpin known as El Chapo. He was caught Friday, 6 months after escaping from prison. The video shows how he nearly got away again. Manuel Bajorquez is in Mexico.
When the Mexican Marines first raided this house, there was no sign of the notorious drug lord El Chapo. Instead, inside a maze of dark rooms captured on helmet cameras, the Marines found a group of cartel members who pleaded for their lives, guns strewn across the floor. Upstairs, a stack of DVDs featured Kate Del Castillo, the Mexican actress who arranged the Rolling Stone interview for actor Sean Penn. And then they found this. A light chain inside a closet that unlocked an unusual panel behind this mirror, revealing a hidden door and El Chapo's escape route. And he almost managed to get away. Fleeing through wood-paneled tunnels, El Chapo made it several blocks underground to the city's storm sewers before he was finally arrested. The government said it had been watching the house for weeks after a cartel member known for his tunnel-making expertise was spotted going inside. Today, El Chapo is locked up here at the same prison he escaped from 6 months ago, awaiting possible extradition to the U.S.
Joaquín Archivaldo Guzmán Loera, better known to the world as El Chapo, was born on April 4, 1957, in the small rural town of Tuna in Mexico's Sinaloa state. This region, part of the Sierra Madre Mountains, was already known for producing marijuana and opium poppies. It was one of Mexico's poorest areas, and life there was defined by subsistence farming and limited opportunities. Guzmán's childhood was shaped by this environment. His family lived in poverty, and he received only a few years of formal education before leaving school altogether. Accounts suggest his father was often absent and abusive, while his mother tried to keep the household together. From a young age, Guzmán worked in the fields, helping to grow beans, corn, and opium poppies. It was in this harsh setting that he developed both resilience and a willingness to survive by any means necessary.
The search for fugitive drug lord El Chapo, okay? Pay close attention to this video. Mexican authorities have just released his closed-circuit video from inside the prison.
By his teens, Guzmán was already involved in the drug trade, starting small like many others in the region. He cultivated marijuana and opium poppies and learned the basics of trafficking. Locals in Sinaloa often describe this path as one of the few ways young men could escape grinding poverty. Guzmán, however, was more ambitious than most. Those who knew him in his early years recall his determination and his practical mind. He earned the nickname El Chapo, meaning shorty because of his height, which was around 5 feet 6 inches. But his stature never limited his drive for power. His first major step into organized crime came under the mentorship of Hector Luis Palma, known as El Güero Palma. Palma was an emerging trafficker connected to the powerful Guadalajara cartel, which at the time controlled much of Mexico's drug trade. Guzmán worked as one of Palma's trusted men, helping coordinate shipments and oversee operations. He gained a reputation for reliability and ruthlessness, qualities that made him valuable in an environment where betrayal could mean death. By the early 1980s, Guzmán was closely linked to Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo, often referred to as the godfather of the Mexican drug trade. Félix Gallardo had built the Guadalajara cartel into a transnational operation, coordinating cocaine shipments from Colombian suppliers and ensuring their safe passage into the United States. Guzmán played a supporting role during these years, organizing logistics and overseeing the movement of drugs. He demonstrated a talent for creative smuggling methods, hiding narcotics inside fire extinguishers, chili pepper cans, and even within shipments of other legitimate goods. These early years under Gallardo exposed him to the complexities of international trafficking and the importance of maintaining connections across borders. The turning point came in 1989 when Félix Gallardo was arrested for the murder of U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration agent Enrique Kiki Camarena. His downfall fractured the Guadalajara cartel, creating a power vacuum and sparking intense competition among former allies. Out of this chaos, several new cartels emerged, each claiming different territories. Guzmán aligned himself with Palma and Ismael El Mayo Zambada, forming what would become the Sinaloa cartel. Their base was the rugged mountains of Sinaloa, a region difficult for law enforcement to penetrate and perfect for growing drug crops. Guzmán quickly distinguished himself from other traffickers. He understood that the cocaine boom of the 1980s and 1990s offered unprecedented opportunities. While Colombian cartels such as Medellin and Cali dominated production, they increasingly relied on Mexican groups for transportation into the United States. Guzmán exploited this position, offering reliable delivery routes that stretched across Mexico's northern border. He invested in fleets of vehicles, planes, and eventually tunnels, building a distribution network that was both efficient and hard to detect. During the early 1990s, the Sinaloa cartel became one of the most powerful groups in Mexico, though it faced fierce competition from rivals such as the Tijuana cartel led by the Arellano Félix brothers. Violence between these organizations was brutal. Guzmán was known to order attacks against rivals without hesitation, and his men carried out assassinations, kidnappings, and ambushes as the cartel wars escalated. Despite the bloodshed, he continued to expand his influence, relying on his ability to move drugs in huge quantities and secure strongholds in strategic territories. By this time, Guzmán had already experienced his first encounters with law enforcement. In 1993, he was arrested in Guatemala and extradited to Mexico, where he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. His capture was a blow to his operations, but it did not end his control. From inside prison, Guzmán continued to direct cartel activities through bribes and trusted intermediaries. The Mexican prison system was plagued by corruption, and money allowed him to maintain significant power behind bars. However, Guzmán was not content with being imprisoned. In 2001, after nearly 8 years in custody, he escaped from Puente Grande prison in Jalisco. Reports claim he was wheeled out hidden in a laundry cart, with the help of guards who had been paid off. His escape made international headlines and cemented his reputation as a figure who could evade justice. For the next decade, he would rise to become the most notorious drug lord in the world. El Chapo's escape marked the beginning of a new chapter in his career. Free once again, he rebuilt and expanded the Sinaloa cartel's influence. He oversaw the development of sophisticated smuggling tunnels under the US-Mexico border, some fitted with rail tracks, ventilation, and electricity. These tunnels allowed massive quantities of drugs to flow north while avoiding detection. The creativity behind these systems revealed his obsession with secrecy and his reliance on underground structures, a theme that would later be central to stories of his hidden vaults. During this period, Guzmán also focused on diversifying his cartel's operations. The Sinaloa cartel trafficked not only cocaine, but also heroin, methamphetamines, and marijuana. This diversification ensured steady profits even as U.S. demand shifted. By the mid-2000s, the cartel controlled a large share of the drug flow into the United States, making Guzmán an extraordinarily wealthy man. Forbes magazine even listed him among the world's billionaires, drawing comparisons to Pablo Escobar. At the same time, Guzmán cultivated an image of a benefactor within his home state of Sinaloa. Locals recall him handing out money to the poor, funding small community projects, and ensuring his hometown benefited from his fortune. Like Escobar before him, these gestures earned him loyalty among ordinary people, who often viewed him as a Robin Hood figure. Yet his generosity stood in stark contrast to the extreme violence that characterized his cartel's wars with rivals and the Mexican state. The 1990s and early 2000s shaped Guzmán into one of the most powerful men in organized crime. His origins in rural poverty, his mentorship under cartel leaders, and his willingness to innovate set him apart. His rise was not only about brutality, but also about strategy, adaptability, and an understanding of how to exploit geography and corruption. These qualities allowed him to outlast many rivals and build a network that reached across continents. After his dramatic escape from Puente Grande prison in 2001, Joaquín Guzmán Loera emerged not only as a fugitive, but as a man determined to rebuild and expand his empire. The years that followed saw the Sinaloa cartel transform into the most dominant criminal organization in Mexico and one of the most powerful trafficking networks in the world. This period was defined by relentless violence, staggering profits, and a growing mythology around El Chapo himself. It was also the time when his reliance on underground structures and secret vaults began to play a more central role in his operations. With Guzmán back in control, the cartel immediately resumed its expansion. The early 2000s were marked by intense competition among Mexico's trafficking groups, many of which had splintered from the old Guadalajara network. The Arellano Felix brothers dominated Tijuana, the Carrillo Fuentes organization held Juarez, and the Gulf Cartel was expanding in the northeast with its armed wing, Los Zetas. Each group fought viciously to control smuggling routes into the United States, known as plazas, and the conflicts often spilled into open warfare in cities and along highways. El Chapo's strength lay in his ability to innovate. Unlike rivals who relied mainly on bribing officials or controlling violent gangs, Guzmán invested in logistics. He was among the first to make systematic use of elaborate tunnels beneath the US-Mexico border. Some of these tunnels ran for hundreds of meters, with reinforced walls, ventilation systems, and even electric lighting. They allowed tons of cocaine, heroin, marijuana, and methamphetamines to be moved discreetly under border fences and into warehouses on the American side. This method proved so successful that authorities later described it as a revolution in smuggling. At the same time, Guzmán expanded his fleet of vehicles, boats, and aircraft. Reports from the early 2000s described shipments sent through modified trucks, hidden compartments in passenger vehicles, and even submarines. Each new technique underscored the cartel's adaptability and Guzmán's insistence on staying one step ahead of law enforcement. His focus on building infrastructure was not just about efficiency, it also reflected his deep-seated need for secrecy and control. The tunnels and safe houses he designed often included hidden vaults, escape hatches, and reinforced rooms, elements that would become notorious features of his reign. The scale of the cartel's growth during this period was immense. By the mid-2000s, the Sinaloa cartel had established control over key trafficking routes from South America through Central America, across Mexico, and into the United States. Analysts estimated that as much as half of the cocaine entering the U.S. passed through Guzman's networks. The cartel also controlled the production of heroin, derived from opium grown in Sinaloa and Guerrero, as well as methamphetamine labs that supplied a growing demand in North America. This diversification made the cartel less vulnerable to market shifts and ensured constant revenue streams. As money poured in, Guzman's fortune grew rapidly. Though exact figures are difficult to verify, financial analysts and investigators agree the sums were staggering. In 2009, Forbes magazine listed him among the world's billionaires, estimating his fortune at around $1 billion. The listing drew widespread attention and anger, particularly from Mexican authorities who criticized the glamorization of a criminal figure. Still, the recognition confirmed what many already knew. El Chapo was one of the wealthiest and most powerful figures in organized crime. Wealth translated into influence, and Guzman understood the value of maintaining loyalty. In his home state of Sinaloa, he often portrayed himself as a benefactor. Locals recall stories of him funding fiestas, paying for medical care, and distributing money to the poor. These gestures created an image of a man who looked after his community, a modern-day Robin Hood. At the same time, however, his cartel unleashed waves of violence across the country. The contrast between his generosity in Sinaloa and the brutality of his operations elsewhere highlighted the duality of his character and strategy. The Mexican government's attempts to confront the cartels escalated under President Felipe Calderón, who in 2006 launched a militarized campaign against organized crime. Soldiers and federal police were deployed across the country, sparking violent clashes with traffickers. The result was a surge in killings as rival cartels fought both the state and one another. For Guzman, the chaos provided opportunities as well as risks. While some of his rivals weakened under pressure, the Sinaloa cartel proved resilient. Guzman's strategy of forming alliances with smaller groups and absorbing weakened factions helped him consolidate control. By the end of the decade, Sinaloa had become the dominant cartel, often described as the Federation because of its partnerships with other traffickers. Guzman, alongside his longtime associate Ismael El Mayo Zambada, was at the helm of this vast operation. Their leadership combined Guzman's audacity and logistical genius with Zambada's more discreet but equally influential management. Together they created a network that spanned continents, stretching into Europe, Asia, and Australia as demand for cocaine and methamphetamines continued to rise. Even as his power grew, Guzman's reliance on secrecy became more pronounced. His properties across Mexico from Sinaloa to Durango and beyond often featured hidden compartments and underground passages. Authorities who later raided his safe houses reported finding hydraulic systems that lifted bathtubs or wardrobes to reveal escape tunnels. Some led directly into sewer systems, allowing him to vanish within minutes during raids. These innovations were not simply practical, they reflected his lifelong paranoia and his belief that survival depended on always having a hidden exit. Violence remained a constant. The battles between Sinaloa and rival groups like the George Cartel, the Beltran Leyva organization, and Los Zetas left tens of thousands dead. High-profile assassinations, mass killings, and gruesome displays of brutality became common. Guzman was often accused of ordering attacks on journalists, politicians, and civilians who opposed him. At the same time, he expanded his influence through bribery. From police officers at the local level to officials within the highest ranks of government, the cartel paid for protection and information. This network of corruption allowed him to operate with relative impunity, even as international pressure mounted. The dual nature of Guzman's reputation was particularly visible in Sinaloa. Their songs known as narco corridos celebrated his exploits, portraying him as a clever and daring leader who outsmarted authorities. These ballads, popular across northern Mexico, added to his myth, even as they drew criticism for glorifying violence. In many communities, El Chapo was admired for his defiance of the state and his success in a world where poverty left few options. For others, especially those living in regions scarred by cartel violence, he was a ruthless criminal, responsible for endless suffering. By the early 2010 essay, El Chapo Guzman was described as the most wanted man in the world, rivaled only by terrorists on global watch lists. Law enforcement agencies from Mexico, the United States, and beyond dedicated enormous resources to tracking him. Despite this, he managed to avoid capture for more than a decade after his prison escape. His ability to disappear into the mountains of Sinaloa or slip through elaborate tunnel systems frustrated authorities and enhanced his legend. The story of his empire during these years is one of contrasts. On one hand, he built a trafficking organization of unprecedented scale, moving billions of dollars worth of narcotics across the globe. On the other, his operations fueled violence that destabilized entire regions, displaced communities, and cost countless lives. His wealth allowed him to live in luxury, yet he remained rooted in the rugged mountains where he was born, often choosing simple safe houses over extravagant mansions. The blend of excess and austerity was part of the paradox that defined him. For Joaquín Guzmán Loera, concealment was more than just a tactic, it was a way of life. From his earliest years in the drug trade, he understood that survival depended not only on violence and money, but on the ability to remain hidden when danger closed in. As his empire grew, this instinct transformed into an obsession with underground structures, tunnels, vaults, and hidden compartments. These systems became one of the hallmarks of his rule, and one of the reasons he remained so elusive to law enforcement for decades. By the early 2000s, the Sinaloa cartel was firmly established as the dominant trafficking organization in Mexico. Guzman's operations spanned multiple continents, and billions of dollars in narcotics moved through his networks each year. But with power came pressure. The Mexican government, backed by billions in aid from the United States through initiatives like the Merida program, intensified its campaign against cartels. Rival organizations such as the Beltran Leyva brothers and Los Zetas also posed threats. For Guzman, survival meant going underground, sometimes literally. His safe houses became legendary for their ingenuity. Investigators, who later raided properties linked to him, often discovered elaborate escape systems. In some cases, bathtubs or wardrobes were fitted with hydraulic lifts that revealed staircases leading to tunnels. These tunnels connected directly to city sewer systems or storm drains, allowing him to vanish within minutes during raids. Accounts from Mexican Marines, who pursued him in cities like Culiacán and Los Mochis, describe near misses where he slipped away seconds before capture, disappearing into hidden passageways, while his pursuers were left searching empty rooms. The tunnels beneath the US-Mexico border represented his most ambitious underground projects. Authorities discovered dozens of them over the years, running hundreds of meters and often equipped with ventilation, lighting, and rail tracks. Some were tall enough for adults to walk through upright, while others were designed for small carts to carry loads of narcotics. Building these tunnels required engineering expertise and significant investment, but the payoff was enormous. They allowed the Sinaloa cartel to move drugs on a massive scale while avoiding border checkpoints. For American law enforcement, each new discovery was a reminder of Guzman's resourcefulness and determination to stay one step ahead. Vaults were another defining feature of his operations. Unlike banks or official financial systems, which were vulnerable to tracing, Guzman relied on cash. The sheer volume of money flowing into the cartel was staggering, and storing it safely posed a logistical challenge. Much like Pablo Escobar before him, El Chapo hid fortunes in walls, underground compartments, and sealed containers buried across his properties. Investigators reported finding rooms stacked with cash, protected by steel doors and guarded by armed men. These vaults often doubled as armories, stocked with weapons ranging from assault rifles to rocket-propelled grenades. For Guzmán, a vault was not just a place to keep money, it was a lifeline, a reserve of resources to ensure he could fight, flee, or bribe his way out of trouble. One of the most striking examples of his reliance on underground systems came in 2014 when he was captured for the second time after more than a decade on the run. Authorities raided a safe house in Mazatlan, a coastal city in Sinaloa, and found Guzmán hiding inside. The property, like many linked to him, was rigged with hidden doors and tunnels. The tunnels led directly into the city's sewer system, providing a potential escape route. This pattern repeated in multiple locations, confirming that nearly every house he used was designed with concealment in mind. The obsession with hidden infrastructure reached its peak in 2015 with his escape from the Altiplano maximum security prison. Just 17 months after his capture, Guzmán disappeared through a mile-long tunnel dug directly into his cell. The tunnel was a feat of engineering, complete with rail tracks, lighting, and ventilation. At its end, a motorcycle modified to run on rails had been used to carry excavated dirt and transport tools. For authorities, the escape was both humiliating and revealing. It demonstrated not only the extent of corruption within the prison system, but also the sophistication and resources at Guzmán's disposal. The fact that a tunnel of such size and precision could be constructed under one of the country's most secure facilities was a testament to his commitment to concealment. Beyond tunnels and vaults, Guzmán also relied on coded ledgers and hidden storage for sensitive information. Just as valuable as cash or drugs were the records of his operations, lists of shipments, payments to officials, and accounts of profits. Investigators who recovered such documents found evidence of systematic bribery reaching into law enforcement, politics, and even the judiciary. These records were often kept in waterproof containers or hidden compartments, ensuring they could survive raids or natural damage. The discovery of these documents not only exposed the scale of his empire, but also provided a glimpse into the intricate web of corruption that shielded him. Former cartel members and associates have described how Guzmán demanded that every property he used contain a way out. This requirement meant that construction crews, often working under threat or secrecy, built trapdoors, reinforced passages, and hidden chambers into houses and ranches. In Culiacán, Marines discovered a series of properties linked by tunnels, some stretching for blocks beneath the city. These passageways allowed him to move between houses undetected, frustrating attempts to corner him. For residents, the revelations were shocking, highlighting how deeply the cartel had embedded itself into the fabric of the city. The psychological dimension of these vaults and tunnels is difficult to ignore. Guzmán's paranoia was not unfounded. He had witnessed the fate of rivals who were betrayed, captured, or killed. He knew that power in the drug trade was precarious and that survival required preparation for the worst. Each vault, each tunnel, and each hidden compartment reflected this worldview. They were not only practical solutions, but also symbols of his mistrust, his fear, and his determination to stay ahead of both enemies and authorities. Rumors about the size and scale of his hidden fortune grew as his legend expanded. Locals in Sinaloa often spoke of buried barrels filled with cash, gold, or weapons, concealed in fields or ranches. Some claimed entire underground complexes existed, designed not just for storage but as safe havens, where Guzmán could live for extended periods. While not all of these stories have been verified, the discovery of real tunnels and vaults lends weight to the belief that much of his wealth remains hidden. Even after his final capture and extradition to the United States in 2017, investigators have continued to search for these hidden caches. Mexican authorities have uncovered safe houses with concealed rooms, buried containers, and sealed compartments long after his arrest. Yet, much like the case of Escobar's hidden fortune, only a fraction of the suspected billions has ever been recovered. The rest, many believe, remains underground, rotting in sealed barrels or waiting to be discovered by chance. By the middle of the 2010 ses, Joaquín Guzmán Loera's empire had reached its breaking point. For more than a decade, he had been the most wanted man in the world, outpacing his rivals and eluding authorities through a mixture of corruption, cunning, and the vast underground systems he designed for survival. But every network eventually frays, and every fugitive runs out of time. For El Chapo, the downfall began with his capture in 2014, his escape in 2015, and the relentless manhunt that followed. The arrest in February 2014 was a major victory for the Mexican government and its American allies. After years of pursuit, Mexican Marines, working with intelligence provided by the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, stormed a hotel in Mazatlan, a coastal city in Sinaloa. Guzmán was found with his wife and young daughters in a modest apartment. Unlike the bloody clashes that characterized many cartel raids, this operation was swift and almost anticlimactic. Authorities presented Guzmán to the world in handcuffs, a subdued figure compared to the larger-than-life legend that surrounded him. For many, it seemed like the end of his story. But Guzmán had already proven he could not be contained. His 2001 escape from Puente Grande prison remained a stain on Mexico's justice system, and skepticism surrounded his new imprisonment. He was sent to Altiplano, the country's highest security facility, built to house its most dangerous criminals. There, he was placed under constant surveillance, confined to a cell with few privileges, and monitored closely. Yet, even inside Altiplano, he was planning. On the evening of July 11, 2015, guards discovered that Guzmán had vanished from his cell. Security cameras recorded him pacing, bending near the shower area, and then disappearing from view. Beneath the small cubicle in his cell, engineers working for the cartel had dug a tunnel more than a mile long. It was equipped with lighting, ventilation, and a motorbike adapted to ride on rails. The tunnel led to a construction site outside the prison, where Guzmán emerged and fled into the night. The escape humiliated the Mexican government and shocked the world. It was not simply a jailbreak, it was a demonstration of the reach and resources of the Sinaloa cartel. For the next 6 months, Guzmán was once again a fugitive, but this time, the pressure was greater than ever before. Mexican authorities, under intense scrutiny, launched one of the largest manhunts in the country's history. American agencies increased their cooperation, determined not to let him embarrass both governments again. Intelligence units tracked his movements, relying on intercepted phone calls, surveillance of associates, and monitoring of his family. Despite the hunt, Guzmán did not completely retreat from the public eye. Reports emerged of him meeting with producers and actors to discuss film projects about his life. In late 2015, the Mexican actress Kate del Castillo arranged a meeting between him and Hollywood actor Sean Penn. The secret encounter in the Sinaloa mountains was intended as part of a potential biography or film. Unknown to Guzmán, Mexican authorities were already closing in, and the meeting helped investigators confirm his whereabouts. The final chapter came in January 2016. Acting on intelligence, Mexican Marines raided a safe house in Los Mochis, Sinaloa. The operation was fierce. Gunfire erupted as Marines stormed the building, and several cartel gunmen were killed in the clash. Guzmán, accompanied by his bodyguard, managed to escape through one of the tunnels beneath the house, a final reminder of his trademark strategy. He emerged onto a nearby street and hijacked a vehicle, but roadblocks had already been set up. Hours later, he was recaptured at a motel, bringing an end to his second great escape. This time, there would be no chance for a third. Mexico, under immense pressure from the United States, agreed to extradite Guzmán. After a lengthy legal process, he was flown to New York in January 2017 to face trial. The extradition marked a turning point. For years, Guzmán had avoided American courts, shielded by corruption and deals in Mexico. Now, he would stand trial in a country where his money and influence held far less sway. The trial, which began in late 2018, became one of the most closely watched in U.S. history. Over the course of 3 months, jurors heard testimony from more than 50 witnesses, including former cartel members, pilots, accountants, and security chiefs. The proceedings offered an unprecedented glimpse into the inner workings of the Sinaloa cartel. Witnesses described mountains of cash hidden in houses, secret vaults buried beneath ranches, and coded ledgers documenting billions in transactions. They detailed how Guzman ordered assassinations, bribed politicians, and relied on tunnels and underground hideouts to evade capture. One of the most striking revelations came from Damaso Lopez, a former lieutenant who had once helped Guzman escape from prison. He testified that El Chapo's paranoia drove him to design every property with hidden exits. Hydraulic doors, disguised passageways, and reinforced vaults were standard features. For Guzman, Lopez explained, secrecy was more valuable than luxury. The testimony confirmed what investigators had long suspected, that the underground systems were central not just to his smuggling operations, but to his personal survival. Other witnesses described the extraordinary lengths to which Guzman went to protect his fortune. Unlike traditional businessmen, he could not rely on banks or official systems. Instead, billions of dollars were stored in cash, often sealed in containers and hidden in vaults. Associates recounted the logistical challenges of managing such wealth, including warehouses filled with dollars stacked from floor to ceiling. The testimony echoed similar accounts from Escobar's era, suggesting that the challenge of hiding unimaginable sums remained a defining feature of the drug trade. The trial also highlighted Guzman's ruthlessness. Witnesses spoke of rivals executed on his orders, of family members of enemies kidnapped and murdered, and of politicians silenced through bribes or threats. Jurors heard about the violence unleashed during the wars with the Tijuana and Juarez cartels, violence that left thousands dead across Mexico. They also learned of his willingness to use terror as a tool of control, ensuring loyalty through fear as much as through generosity. In February 2019, Guzman was convicted on all counts, including drug trafficking, money laundering, and engaging in a continuing criminal enterprise. He was sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years and ordered to forfeit more than $12 billion. The sentencing marked the end of his career as a trafficker and cemented his place in history as one of the most notorious criminals of the modern era. Today, El Chapo is held at ADX Florence, a supermax prison in Colorado, often described as the most secure facility in the United States. Confined to a small cell for 23 hours a day, under constant surveillance, he is far removed from the tunnels and vaults that once defined his life. For a man who spent decades building escape routes and underground systems, his current confinement is perhaps the ultimate irony. A prison designed to ensure there are no exits, no hidden passages, and no chance of escape. Yet even in captivity, the legend of El Chapo's vaults continues. Authorities have only recovered a fraction of the fortune he is believed to have accumulated. Stories persist of hidden stashes buried across Mexico, sealed away in barrels, or locked behind reinforced walls. Farmers occasionally report stumbling upon decayed bills or containers in remote areas, fueling speculation that much of his wealth remains hidden. Just as with Pablo Escobar, the mystery of where the money went has become part of his legacy. The impact of Guzman's downfall on the Sinaloa cartel has been complex. While his arrest and extradition removed the figurehead, the organization did not collapse. Leadership passed to others, including his sons, known as Los Chapitos, and his longtime associate El Mayo Zambada. Violence has continued in parts of Mexico, and the cartel remains one of the most powerful trafficking groups in the world. In many ways, this underscores the reality that Guzman, while central to its mythology, was only one part of a larger system that persists beyond any individual. The story of El Chapo's final years is a study in contrasts. On one hand, it demonstrates the limits of even the most elaborate. For decades they kept him alive, allowed him to escape capture, and helped him amass a fortune of staggering proportions. On the other, it shows that no system, however clever, can withstand the combined weight of international law enforcement and betrayal from. In the end, his obsession with concealment could not save him from the collapse of his empire.
When Guzman was photographed in New York during his trial, dressed in a plain suit and surrounded by guards, he appeared smaller than the myth that had grown around him. The man who had once ruled an empire from the mountains of Sinaloa, who had walked through mile-long tunnels and stored billions in secret vaults, was now reduced to an inmate with no escape routes. His legend remains, but his freedom is gone. The underground world he built is sealed, both literally in the hidden caches across Mexico, and figuratively in the history of the drug trade.